Come to the Darkside, Copper Top. We have cookies.
Right, apologies for this video. I should be doing a waffle about drone regulations, an update on DJI antennas, and completing, or starting should I say, editing on a build video. But then this arrived along with some other stuff and I got a little bit excited. So, and I'm killing balance leads every 5 seconds at the moment because the weather's cold. So, this is, to my knowledge, the first DJI sort of small quad, and this one I think is a 2.5 inch. And I opened this earlier on, but I haven't actually had time to really look at its components or what it's about. Or should I say, I know what it's about, but I haven't had time to sort of fiddle with it. And this is the TransTec Beetle Hom, I believe it's called, which is a 2.5 inch quad with the DJI unit shoved inside. And I kind of got this for 2 reasons really. One, if it's rubbish, I get a free DJI Air unit, which is not to be sniffed at. But 2, if they manage to pull this off, given how good the DJI system is in terms of FPV feed, and the fact that its DVR recording is not bad also, it's going to make one hell of a quad for sort of mooching around smallish spaces and just enjoying flying in a way that the Diatone GT series etc tried to be. And they were great quads and they were fun to fly, but the FPV experience itself was awful because they were all carrying those sort of Cadex turtles and that sort of stuff, which didn't last very long. So this guy, I'm hoping, is going to be an absolute little humdinger. But my OCD alert is immediately going off because whoever built this one stuck the DJI unit in cockeyed, and that is really setting me off. So that is going to have to be immediately moved. So this guy is a little 2.5 inch quad. It's got 1106 motors on it. I don't actually know what kV they are. They're just TransTec Next FR6. And inside this little guy we've got a 4-in-1 ESC for 25 amps rated to 5S apparently. And we've got a little F4 20x20 flight controller, which obviously allows a plug-in to the DJI system. And I haven't got it to hand, but they also send you the sort of box for the DJI Air unit, so you get the original antennas and stuff. So we've got this little guy. If I just set it aside, you also get some spare canopies. So we've got a clear one and sort of luminous greeny yellow. Get a battery strap, Allen key, and what I'm guessing is 3D printed camera protector for the DJI system, which is nice because they're generally sold out everywhere. We get some stickers. Gotta say, the packaging is lovely. Get some stickers, and then there's a hidden bit in the bottom where we get some more goodies. So we get some prop guards if you want to use them, which feel pretty sturdy, feel pretty light as well. Get screws, I'm guessing, for the props. And prop wise, I believe we get 2 different sets, which we do, yeah. So we've got a set of gem fan, I think they're 2540, the ones that come on the sort of diatom type 2.5-inch quads, and we also get these little gem fan 2.5 by 3 props, and in the instructions it says these are for freestyle and the gem fan are for racing. So if I just get these out, I'm not sure if I'm going to use these, although at some point I probably will do, but just in terms of initially flying it, I think I'm going to fly it without. So I suppose what we should do first of all is weigh it. So that comes in at 131 grams. Take that off. Yeah, so that comes in at 131 grams. If we add the ducks, obviously without any of the screws, can I do that? And the ducks come in at 14 grams. Yeah, so 145 grams, obviously minus the screws. And this guy's going to need a little bit of setting up, both in terms of binding the DJI unit and updating it to the latest firmware, unlocking it, etc. But I'm pretty sure this guy doesn't come with a receiver either, so we're going to have to crack it open and see what the score is inside. So I thought it'd be a nice idea to do this before I fly it. But my first impressions are it's a really nice little quad. The frame itself feels really good, and you've got a silicone pad on the bottom. And it certainly looks like it's been well put together, other than the DJI unit. You've also got this sort of Y-shape set of LEDs on the top, which you can probably make out. Motors feel pretty much, you know, par for the course, decent quality. I wonder if they're made by Emax actually. But TransTec themselves, I only really know them from frames, and the frames that they make tend to do pretty well on reviews. I always remember Kebab saying that they were really good frames when he tested them, and as he hates everything, it must have been pretty decent carbon for him to like it. And these sort of injection molded canopies again look really good quality, although I don't know how well they will fare when it's cold and you clonk one, but they certainly feel stronger than the sort of diatom ones, which were always a little bit flimsy. So, and you'll also notice at the back, instead of having the usual DJI antennas, we've got these little linear antennas, which I'm guessing probably won't make that big an issue on range, because we already know that the DJI system isn't particularly fussy when it comes to antennas. So I'm hoping that we won't lose too much by using those guys. So what I need to do is figure out really how we take this canopy off. I'm guessing you sort of go at it from the bottom. If I just unscrew this. Yeah, so that's... Yeah, so we've got basically a really long screw going right the way up and through. So there's potential weight saving there if you were to change that to titanium or something, if you can get them that long. And you can see at the front we've got this really beefy, actually, 3D printed mounts for the DJI system. So if I just take that out, you can see the LED. I have to get rid of these screws, otherwise I'm going to lose them. So that's a standoff that's just fallen off. Yeah, that's the rear standoff. Oh yeah, look, the whole thing just lifts off. Oh, that's actually really clever. Possibly a little bit flimsy, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, so that just all lifts up, and inside you can see obviously the 4-in-1 ESC and the flight controller. And then we've obviously got the DJI air unit hither, which is just, is that just stuck down, is it? I think it's just stuck down with some, it is just stuck down with some foam tape, which is fantastic, because I can immediately put it where the idiotic person who put it in wrong did it. Oh, that's better. Oh, I've got to say, I really like that, how it just comes apart. I mean, I suppose the downside of it is we've really got only 3 screws holding this whole unit together, but they are pretty, he says as he immediately loses one, they are pretty long, and as you can see, the DJI unit just basically plugs in here. So the first thing I notice is there's quite a lot of play in that flight controller, because it's just sat on these sort of rubber spaces. It's kind of more play than I would ideally want, to be honest with you. So the first thing I'll be doing is tightening these little M2 screws up. But as a setup, I mean, that's as simple and easy as you're really ever gonna see. It's a beautifully simple layout, and you've got tons of space underneath, and you've also got this sort of space here as well. So I guess I'm going to have to decide what sort of receiver I'm going to put in it. The one thing I can't see is any sort of connection points for the flight controller. So I'm going to have to undo this and see what is underneath. I hope I just haven't backed myself into a corner here, and maybe it only works with the DJI unit. It's got to have, oh, the DJI unit uses an RX and a TX, so presumably it will run S-Bus. But we shall wait and see. It's not a big issue if it doesn't. Don't really have a lot of experience in that, actually, thinking about it. Obviously the DJI unit, if you use the built-in receiver, must run on, I think it runs on S-Bus, or it did do. Might be wrong on that. Right. So that's that out of the way. Let's lift this little guy up and see what the score is. So there are no pads whatsoever on this flight controller. It basically is, as you see. So we've got ground, is my head in the way? We've got ground plus, and then we've got motor wires 1 to 4. And then on the other side we've got RX, ground, R1, T2 and ground. I'm guessing, I'm talking out off the top of my head here because I don't really have any experience on what DJI really uses in terms of its controller, simply because I've never used it. But I'm guessing I can literally just unplug the connector, and instead of using the million wires that it usually comes with, which annoyingly in this case they're a different colour, but I'm guessing I can just use the TX and RX, which would usually be set up for the DJI controller, to run Crossfire or potentially an XM Plus. So I'm going to have to get back to you on that when I've had a little play. But yeah, I mean, first impressions are I really, really like it. I mean, if I can get it working as well as I hope, it's going to be a heavy little thing. But if it flies well, I'm not too worried about that sort of heavy weight. I'm more sort of the bits that concern me are, will we have jello? Because that's going to sort of kill any enjoyment from it. But if it doesn't have jello, then I can see a definite place for it in my life, because the DJI system, sorry, I'm really wobbling the camera here, let me just move it back. Because the DJI system, in terms of just pure flight fun, will really play into this guy's hands if it's sort of relatively sluggish but hopefully relatively smooth. We can have a lot of fun with this guy. I mean, you imagine this guy's small enough that you could fly it around your house with its prop guards on, of course. And because you've got such clear and beautiful reception, certainly if you're flying slowly, you could even fly in high quality mode, which I wouldn't generally do for freestyle or racing or whatever you're doing. But with this little guy, I think there are some really interesting things we can potentially do. And these motors, being 1106, should have a bit of shove. It's just whether they've got the low end torque to carry what is going to be a pretty heavy quad. You know, it's going to be pushing 200 grams even with a 3S battery on it. And if we're looking at potentially running 4S, which I think will be too much for it because it's only small, these sort of size quads tend to, in my experience, work better on 3S. But I noticed in the destructions that, and it gives you some very basic ones. Where does it say it? Yeah, recommended using Tattoo 3S 750 more battery to get best experience. Beetle can support on 5S. Take on your own risk. So it can support up to 5S, although you'd be absolute mad to run that. But if you can imagine on 5S, I mean, it's going to be a hell of a hefty battery. But once it gets going, it's probably going to be really fast. So yeah, I'm just going to turn this video off now. That's the initial waffle. I love the way it's packaged, like so many of these sort of Chinese quads. They do it so well that it just feels like you've got something quality. In terms of immediate impressions, I mean, you could save a fair amount of weight just by, I mean, look at that camera mount. That's sort of like the camera mount that you would expect on a, you know, a 7-inch quad, not a 2.5-inch one. And the prints themselves are pretty good quality. It feels really sturdy. So there's a lot of things that can potentially be used to play with on this, and that's one of the things that I originally liked about it. It could potentially be a platform for a lot of experiments. And I've got sort of motors kicking around like the what were these, the Gap RC 1206s, stuff like that I could potentially use. But let's start off let's get this set up. I'll see if I can get a receiver bound to it, and we'll go from there. Right, I just thought I'd stop what I was doing just to quickly show you, as it's going to be easier on something this small rather than taking it all apart again. So the original stack is basically meant for DJI. So obviously you're supposed to be using the receiver that's built into the air unit. Obviously I'm not using the air unit, so the yellow and black wire here, which would be your ground and DJI input. The yellow wire is RX and the black wire is labelled as ground. However, I've basically installed Crossfire Nano, which when wrapped with insulation tape just nicely fits beneath this stack and holds itself in place. And I've connected it up in Betaflight and it seems to work absolutely fine. Obviously if you were using S-Bus, you would just use the signal wire. Now, a couple of odd things, or things to be aware of. I've tested the output to the DJI unit, and it's basically giving you VBAT, which is fine, because the DJI unit will take up to 4S batteries, and realistically, you're not going to be using beyond that on this little guy. I know it says it's capable of up to 5S, but I'm guessing you're going to fry something. Also, the motors are 4,500 kV. They do also do them in 6,000 kV, but they're noted by the red wires as opposed to black ones. However, because we haven't got, because this guy isn't regulated to the DJI, we need to pick up basically the receiver voltage from somewhere else, because we haven't got any pads on here we can easily tap into. However, on the underside of the canopy you can see the LED, and I'm guessing you can change the colours in this because it's got obviously a single signal pad, but the LED is basically using the 5-volt regulator on the flight controller. So you've got two choices here. You could tap into basically the wire, sorry, this wire, but all I'm going to do is solder to the 5-volt and ground, basically where it connects to the LED, and that's where I'm going to get my voltage from. The other thing you could do is, I think actually not, let's not go down that route. I think XM pluses, which is what I was going to use, but I just decided to use the Crossfire just to see if it would work. I think the XM Plus is rated up to 13 volts anyway. I can't remember what Crossfire is rated to, but you could probably just run the XM Plus straight from VBAT if you're running this guy on 3S, which is likely to be what I'm going to be running it on, at least initially. So that was all relatively easier than I expected. It's a really neat little unit, and the flight controller's also got a USB-C port, so while you're faffing around updating your DJI Air unit and all the rest of it, you can obviously do the same. And this little guy's running Betaflight. So what I'm going to do is just put this guy together, connect it back up again, and then I'll have a look in Betaflight and we'll see how it's set up. I've just tested to make sure that everything works. Crossfire bound up without issue. I haven't changed any settings in Betaflight beyond binding my receiver and just making sure this guy works. And I've just done a quick test hover in my garage, not even using the props it came with actually. These are the Emax 2.5-inch props, which came with the Emax Tiny Hawk Freestyle, which is this guy, and as you can see mine's been jazzed up a little bit with TPU and a Runcam Predator Nano 4. So, and I've done one other thing, because those LEDs, which were white, were pretty blinding. So I've just turned them to red, which is really easy to do in Betaflight. You can change them to whatever you want, and I'm guessing you could get these to change colour with different throttle positions, etc., or even turn them on and off on an aux switch as per Betaflight. But so far everything looks good. So I'm going to end this video here, because there's a lot of things to play around with this, and I don't have the weather to do it. We've got massive flooding, and even in the brief test flights that I've had, it's been drizzling, and I don't want to wreck this guy in the rain. So my first impressions, and these are my first impressions, are mind blown. You have no idea what it feels like to be flying a really quiet little quad down your street in HD. It's incredible. In terms of the way it flies, it feels really, really smooth. I did notice a little bit of twitchiness dropping into my own prop wash when descending from altitude, which is probably down to eye gain. So there are definite tuning things to do, but out of the box with just my rates, I could sort of tool around with this in my street, you know, in a little park as is. It feels pretty rapid in the sort of areas that I've flown it, you know, around my tiny little garden, down the street and back again. It doesn't feel hugely heavy. It feels nicely weighted, like a freestyle quad. Now, of course, it doesn't fly like a 5-inch. None of these little guys do. So I'm going to have to wait until I can get it into some better areas and better weather, and see what I can do with it and what its weaknesses are. And this is just running the Emax props. I haven't even tested the ones it came with, the Gem Fan and the HQ, and the reason why I haven't is I've got loads of these Emax props, because these were the ones that I ended up on the Diaton GT 249 Plus, which suffered from jello. And the Emax props, although lacking ultimate feel, were better balanced than the HQ and the Gem fans. So we'll have to wait for future testing on those. We'll have to wait until, I'm hoping at the weekend the weather is fine. It certainly looks like it's going to be, and I can get this guy into some sort of tree spots and see how it does. Flying up and down my street, even blocked by my house, etc. I had no issues with range or anything like that, and this was running on 500 milliwatts as opposed to the 1200 it could go up to. So yeah, I've got to say I'm super excited about this little guy. The possibilities for it are frankly endless. I haven't put the ducts on it yet, which of course will impact its performance somewhat, because you just basically have to unscrew the motors and sit them underneath. So all those things will come in future videos. And the one thing we need to touch on is this isn't a cheap throw around quad. The quad itself, minus the DJI unit, isn't hugely expensive as these things go. But obviously you're adding in an air unit which retails for 175 quid. So this is a serious bit of expensive tech. The air units, by the way, are on offer at the moment. Unmanned Tech have them for, I think, 135 quid, and DJI themselves are selling them as well for 20-25% off, whatever they are. So if you've got one kicking around and you fancy the idea of one of these little quads, then on this initial brief testing, it's fantastic. A few things to mention. Its weak point will be the canopy, which of course is this injection molded plastic. Not so much the canopy itself, but just the fact that the whole, sorry, my batteries are beeping again, this whole carbon plate and the air unit and the camera are basically held in by these three very long M2 bolts. So if you crack and smash the sort of brass inserts here, you've essentially lost the whole structural integrity of the quad. So how this canopy part survives is going to be the true test of this little guy. Obviously you've got tons of protection. You've got tons of protection for the DJI unit camera wise. You've got this little 3D printed mount which pretty much protects your lens perfectly. Obviously this part of the DJI unit is a little bit exposed, so it's going to uglify it, but I'd probably attach a little bit of foam or something, silicone, whatever you can, that's not going to sort of restrict airflow too much, but it's just going to take away any impacts. Sorry, I've got to get that. She's going to take away any impacts that the air unit itself will take, because obviously potentially it's a bit of a weak part. It almost needs a fin on top of it actually. But if this guy continues to impress me, there's a lot you can do with this. Mark, if you're watching this, what we could potentially do is maybe 3D print a canopy, 3D print some ducts, just sort of turn it more into a cine quad, because while these ducts are fine, I imagine they're not going to be particularly robust if you start crashing into things. So yeah, as a quad, I think TransTec have done an immensely good job. It flies better out the box, way better than any of these other little quads I've tested. But of course, that's just tooling up and down my street. I can't really do acro, or I can do acro, but I won't do acro around my neighbours, simply because it's it's too dangerous and it's disrespectful. So I'll take it to a more private location and test it when the rain stops, and we'll go from there. But yeah, initial impressions are I'm really excited. The lads recently had a Whoop event where they were racing through LED gates and stuff like that, and I hate those little whoops. But the thought of doing that in HD is super exciting, and the thought of just being able to sort of tool around, stick this in my pocket, and go around woods and trees and what have you in potentially a quad that's going to give you a fairly decent range with the DJI unit rocking 1200 milliwatt is really exciting. In terms of flight times, I was sort of getting around 4 minutes tooling up and down, and that was running sort of GMB, not that one, GMB 550s. They do recommend a 750, but I haven't got any of those. And again, battery testing is going to come in a future video. But I've got Unmanned 850, which is a GMB rebrand 3S. Got some Tattoo 650s, and I have a Kiro 600 4S. Haven't tried it on 4S yet because it's not practical to do so, but I suspect, like the GT249 and other quads like that, the benefits that you'll get in terms of top speed will be outweighed by the fact that you'll lose a lot of its nimbleness. And obviously this guy being really heavy, albeit it feels pretty swift in the air, when you're looking at a weight all up with its props on and the obviously the antennas, etc., of 145 grams, add a 650 battery, and you're looking at 196 grams. We need to take that into account. So yeah, so this is a bit of an overlook. As always, I need to do more testing, but the weather is not allowing me to do that. But yeah, shout out to TransTec. It's the best little quad I've had in a long time, and really the reason for that is the DJI unit, which is just, you know, mind-blowing in the sort of circumstances that I was flying this up and down my street. You know, it's just out of this world. Obviously in heavy tree proximity it loses some of that shine, but it still remains, you know, the best thing that's happened to my FPV life in a long time. So yeah, that's it from me. Cheers for watching, and be prepared for a number of other videos on this little guy as I play around with different tunes. Obviously I'm going to try various different things. I'll try running it on Mockingbird with its prop guards indoors and all the rest of the stuff. So yeah, lots to play with here, so really excited. Yeah, and you can check these out on Banggood. Thanks guys, bye bye.